Sometimes the loudest scream is absolute silence. You see, my friends, people think that disappearing means you've lost. They think going quiet means you've been defeated, that you've got nothing left to say. But the truth? Silence is one of the most powerful moves you can make in a person's mind. It's not retreat. It's not surrender. It's the kind of move that flips the game without making a sound. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never see your own worth the same way again. Before we dive in, press that like button, hit subscribe, and join our community here. I'm telling you, if you've ever been taken for granted, ignored, or treated like your presence was optional, what you're about to hear will change the way you handle every relationship from now on. Hey folks, imagine this. You walk into a room every day waving, smiling, bringing the light with you. People nod, smile back, maybe even rely on you to keep the mood alive. Then, one day without drama, without warning, you stop showing up. You don't slam the door, you don't make an announcement, you just vanish. At first, nobody notices. The conversations continue, the laughter rolls on. But slowly, the air changes. That empty chair in the corner becomes a shadow in their mind. The energy feels incomplete. And without even saying a word, you've changed the entire atmosphere. That's what disappearing does. Not ghosting out of bitterness, not storming away to teach them a lesson. No, my friends, I'm talking about walking away with peace in your chest and dignity in your stride. There's a big difference between running away and choosing not to stand where you're not valued. One is fear. The other is freedom. Here's the lie you've been told your whole life. If you love them, you must always prove it. We've been fed this idea that constant reassurance, constant chasing, constant availability is the only way to keep someone. That if you stop showing up, you'll be forgotten. Folks, that's wrong. In fact, the opposite is true. People are drawn to what's missing. The human mind is a magnet for unanswered questions and unexplained absences. It's like reading a book, and suddenly a whole chapter is missing. You can't stop thinking about what was in that chapter, can you? You replay the last part you read, searching for clues, wondering what you missed. That's what your absence does in someone's life. It becomes the missing chapter they can't stop flipping back to. And here's where it gets interesting. Silence doesn't just affect them, it changes you. The moment you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, stop begging for a seat at someone's table, you discover something dangerous. You were the table all along. You were the prize, my friends, not because they said so, but because you finally said so to yourself. You're going to see it in their eyes one day. That flicker of uncertainty when they realize they no longer know your every move. When your energy isn't orbiting their world anymore. And you'll smile. Not because you've won, but because you finally understand the real win was reclaiming your peace. So here's what I'm asking you today. Choose yourself, not with arrogance, but with clarity. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you keep thinking you're not enough without someone's approval, that's the color your life will take. Change the color, stand in your own worth. Write this in the comments so it sticks in your mind. I am enough. 3 simple words. Say it, type it, believe it. And if you felt this message, if you're ready to step into that quiet power, press the like button, subscribe, and let's walk through this journey together, hour by hour, day by day. Stay with me. Hour 1 to 6, the initial dismissal. At first, they don't notice the storm because the air still feels calm. That's the thing, my friends. When you disappear, the first few hours are almost uneventful. They think nothing's changed. They carry on like a person strolling through a forest, unaware that the bridge behind them has just burned to ash. It's quiet, too quiet. But they don't hear it yet. They've been used to you being there, always, reliably, predictably, so their mind assumes you still are. They've built an entire sense of security on the belief that you'll always orbit their world, that you'll always answer when they call. It's like a radio station they've listened to for years. They know the songs, the timing, the feel. One morning, they turn the dial expecting the same melody, but instead, there's silence. At first, they think it's a glitch, maybe a signal issue. Surely the music will come back any second. They don't panic, not yet, because they believe they know the pattern. You've always been there before. You'll be there again. In these first hours, they tell themselves little stories to keep the illusion intact. They're probably busy. They'll text later. They're just distracted. It's the mind's way of avoiding discomfort, because if they admit to themselves, even for a second, that something's shifted, then they'd have to face a truth they're not ready for. But here's what you need to understand. You're not doing this to scare them. You're not vanishing to create some desperate scramble for attention. No, this is about stepping back from a place of self-respect, not spite. You've stopped placing your piece on their table for them to decide if it's worth keeping. And that's the first shift, not in them, but in you. Still, they think they know the ending. In their mind, disappearing is just part of the chase. People have played this game with them before. Go silent for a while, stir curiosity, then come back with the same energy as before. And here's the lie they've been taught, that you can't resist returning, that no matter how far you wander, the pull will always bring you back to their feet, that your need for them is greater than your need for yourself. But you and I know different. You're not withholding attention as bait. You're not dangling silence like a hook. You've simply stopped pouring energy into a cup that never pours back. And this is where the fear, the real fear, will eventually creep into their mind. Not because you've gone, but because they'll realize you've gone without leaving a trail. Think about it. When someone pulls away but leaves clues, a vague post, a breadcrumb of attention, a just checking in, it's easy to believe they're still within reach. But when someone vanishes with the kind of calm that says, "I don't need to be seen to exist," that's unsettling. It's not noise, it's presence without proximity. In those first hours, they may even laugh about it. They might joke to themselves, "Oh, they'll be back, they always are." But deep inside, though they won't admit it, there's a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of discomfort. Because something feels different. You're not pacing the cage anymore. You've opened the door and stepped into the open field. Here's the part they won't say out loud. The most unnerving people are the ones who don't flinch. When others pull away, it's usually reactive, a burst of emotion, a silent protest. But when you pull away with composure, with no sign of anger, no edge of bitterness, it's harder to read. And what the human mind can't read, it can't control. That's the seed that's planted in hour one, a seed they won't water on purpose, but one that will grow every time they don't hear from you. It will stretch roots into their certainty and push small cracks into their belief that they've got you figured out. And here's where we break another lie they've believed, maybe even one you've believed too, that silence means absence. My friends, silence is not absence. Silence is presence magnified. It's like the pause before a thunderclap, the held breath before a confession, the moment the ocean pulls back before the wave crashes. Why will it be difficult for them to accept? Because the pattern has always been safe. They've been conditioned to see you as a constant, a familiar light in the window. And humans, even the strongest ones, build their confidence on what they believe is permanent. The moment that permanence is questioned, the ground beneath them shifts. They will try to convince themselves this is temporary. They will replay your last interaction, trying to find a clue. They will fill in the silence with assumptions. And the funny thing? In the early hours, they'll feel no urgency to reach out, because pride will whisper, "Don't give them the satisfaction." But pride is fragile. Pride shatters quietly when faced with genuine, unshakable stillness. That's what makes these first hours so important. You're setting a tone. You're saying without words, I don't need to push my presence into your life for it to matter. That's not arrogance, that's clarity. And clarity is rare. So, my friends, let me tell you this. If you can hold your ground in those first hours, if you can resist the itch to explain yourself or just check in, you'll feel something shift inside you. You'll realize that the power isn't in making them wonder where you went. The power is in knowing you don't need to be there for them to feel you. And when they do feel it, and they will, it won't be because you shouted. It'll be because you walked away without slamming the door, and the silence you left behind was louder than anything you could have said. Write this in the comments so it stays with you. My silence speaks. Let it be your anchor, your reminder, your quiet shield. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your value isn't tied to how loudly you can demand to be seen. It's in how deeply you can be felt without saying a single word. And this, my friends, is just the first hour. If this is how the game changes in the opening move, imagine what happens when the hours turn into days. Stay with me. The unraveling has only just begun. Hour 7 to 12, the first quiet check. The mind will tell itself 100 stories before it admits it's unsettled. By the time the day has rolled past the halfway mark, something small but important begins to stir inside them. They won't call it missing you, not yet. They won't even label it as concern. Instead, it comes disguised as a casual thought. I wonder what they're up to. Just like that, you've slipped from the background into the edges of their attention. It starts innocently enough. They glance at their phone, not expecting anything, but hoping for something. They open your chat thread, scroll back a little, maybe reread the last thing you said. It's not longing in the romantic sense. It's an itch, the kind you can't quite scratch because you don't know where it's coming from. And still, they'll tell themselves, it's nothing. But nothing is exactly how silence works its way in. Think of it like a faint scent in the air. At first, you can't place it. You tell yourself you're imagining it, but once you notice it, you can't unsmell it. That's what your absence feels like now. A faint, unfamiliar note in the air that lingers no matter what they distract themselves with. Here's the interesting part, my friends. In these hours, they'll start checking without admitting they're checking. They'll scroll past your name in their feed and slow down just slightly. They'll glance at your profile, pretending it's by accident. They might even look for signs of life, a post, a like, a comment, something to confirm you're still in orbit. And here's where a quiet truth begins to set in. You're not in orbit anymore, at least not around them. See, people have this unspoken belief that if you've always been present, you'll remain present, that no matter how much they pull back, you'll fill the space. That belief is comforting until it's challenged. And that's exactly what's happening now. You've created a gap, and in that gap, something uncomfortable is forming. Uncertainty. But they won't admit it's uncertainty. Pride will tell them it's curiosity. Ego will say, I just want to know. Yet deep down, the human mind hates unanswered questions. It's wired to fill in the blanks, to complete the story. And right now, you've stopped giving them the next page. In these hours, they might even start telling themselves stories to explain your silence. They must be busy. Maybe they're just tired. They'll reach out later. It's a survival tactic, because if they admit your silence is intentional, they'd have to face the idea that they don't have the influence they thought they did. And that's a harder pill to swallow than the lie that you're simply preoccupied. Here's a metaphor for you folks. Imagine walking through a hallway you've walked every day for years, where the same picture hangs on the wall. One day, you walk through, and the picture is gone. At first, You tell yourself it's probably being cleaned, maybe moved temporarily, but then hours pass, and the empty hook is still there. You can't stop glancing at it, wondering why it's missing. That's your presence in their life, a fixture they didn't think much about until it was gone. Now, it's all they can notice. The lie we need to break here is this: they think they still have control. They think if they wanted your attention, they could get it whenever they choose. They believe you're just a tap away, waiting in the wings. But your silence in these hours isn't just a pause, it's a quiet declaration. My world doesn't revolve around your timing. And that declaration, whether they acknowledge it or not, is beginning to unsettle their sense of power. Why will this be difficult for them? Because up until now, their confidence in your connection has been built on patterns. The pattern that you'll respond quickly, the pattern that you'll re-engage even if they've pulled back, the pattern that your presence is a given. When a pattern breaks, even in a small way, the brain reacts. It leans in, it watches, it waits for things to return to normal. But normal isn't coming back, at least not the version they remember. During these hours, they might test the waters without making it obvious. They might post something they know you'll see. A song lyric, a quote, a photo. Something vague enough to deny if confronted, but pointed enough that it's aimed at you. It's a way of saying, I'm still here, you know. They want to see if you'll bite, if you'll break the silence first. But you don't. And that's the part that will start to stand out. Most people, when tempted, give in. They send the quick reaction, they like the photo, they drop the comment. But you remain still. Your silence isn't lazy, it's not careless, it's composed, alive. It says, I see you, but I'm not chasing you. And that is something they are not used to feeling. Think about how much power there is in that. In a world where everyone rushes to respond, to prove they still care, you've chosen to do the opposite. Not out of malice, but out of strength. And strength that doesn't need to announce itself always feels heavier. As the evening approaches, their thoughts will drift back to you more often. Maybe they're out with friends, but there's a pause in the conversation and their mind flickers. I wonder if they're thinking about me. Maybe they're home scrolling late at night and they check again. Still nothing. That still nothing is no longer a neutral space. It's beginning to hum with meaning. And my friends, that's the beauty of these first quiet checks. You're not chasing their attention, but they're already starting to chase the idea of yours. Not because you've asked them to, but because the mind is drawn to the gap, the absence, the question mark. So what's rising in you during these hours? A sense of control? Something better, a sense of clarity. You're realizing that you don't need to be constantly present to matter. You don't need to perform to stay in someone's mind. The absence itself can carry the message. And this is where you start to feel the shift in your own identity. You're not the person who jumps at the first breadcrumb. You're not the one who fills every silence with reassurance. You're the one who can let the silence do the talking. Write this in the comments so it becomes a part of you. My stillness is strength. Let the world see it. Let them feel it. Show them that your worth isn't dependent on constant engagement. It's anchored in who you are, whether they're watching or not. And remember, folks, this is just the second stage. If the first hours planted the seed of uncertainty, these hours are the quiet watering of it. They're checking, they're wondering, and soon they'll be feeling it. Stay with me, because what happens when the night settles and the day turns over? That's when the silence starts to echo in ways they can't ignore. Hour 13 to 24. The night realization. Silence gets louder in the dark. By the time night falls, my friends, the air feels different. The distractions that kept them from noticing you're gone start to fade. The chatter slows down, the errands are done, the people around them drift off to their own worlds. And now, for the first time all day, there's space for them to be alone with their thoughts. That's when silence stops being something they can ignore and starts being something they feel. It's funny, isn't it? During the day, the world gives them cover. The noise of conversations, the rhythm of work, the scroll of social media, all of it gives them somewhere to hide from the gap you've left. But the night is a different beast. Night strips away the distractions and leaves nothing but the truth. And the truth is this: you're not there. They pick up their phone. Maybe it's habit, maybe it's hope. They check their messages, and your name isn't lighting up the screen. They glance at your profile, maybe for the second or third time that day. Still nothing. And now the nothing feels heavier than it did 12 hours ago. It's no longer background noise. It's a presence in the room with them. Think about it. Absence in the daylight feels like distance. Absence at night feels like loss. Why? Because night has a way of amplifying everything we try to avoid during the day. At night, the mind replays things. It revisits old conversations, scans for meaning in places it never looked before. And in this quiet, they start retracing the last time you spoke, the last message you sent, the last moment they felt your energy in their world. Here's a metaphor for you folks. Imagine standing on the shore during the day. The ocean is there, but its sound is drowned out by wind, birds, and voices. But at night, when all else is still, the waves sound louder, more deliberate, impossible to ignore. That's your silence now. It's the waves in their mind, crashing in steady, unyielding rhythm. And here's where the first real discomfort creeps in. Because the human mind hates a change it can't control. They could reach out, sure, they could send a message, drop a comment, find a reason to pull you back into their space. But pride is a tricky gatekeeper. Pride says, don't break first, they'll come to you. Yet every hour that passes without you showing up makes pride feel less like a shield and more like a weight. They might try to laugh it off. They might tell themselves, it's no big deal, I'm fine. But why are they scrolling through their own posts, wondering if you've seen them? Why are they lingering on memories that used to pass through their mind without a second thought? The truth is, they're not fine. They're adjusting to the first night where your presence isn't a given. And this is where we break another lie they've believed, that you need to be actively speaking to stay on their mind. Wrong. The mind clings to what it can't resolve. Your silence is now the unfinished sentence, the half-played song, the missing puzzle piece. The more they try to move past it, the more their attention circles back to it. It's in these hours that your absence starts to shift from temporary to uncomfortable. That subtle unease becomes harder to ignore when the world is quiet and the only company they have is their own reflection in the screen. Maybe they see a picture of you in their gallery, in their mind, and for the first time they feel the gap. They don't like it, but they can't undo it. Somewhere in this stretch of hours, they'll do something they won't admit. They'll replay the moments when your presence felt certain, steady, warm. Maybe they remember the last time you sent a late-night message. Maybe they remember your laugh, your voice, the way you made them feel chosen without even trying. And now those memories don't feel like comfort. They feel like reminders of something that's slipping. The fear isn't fully formed yet, but it's beginning. It's not, they're gone for good. It's more like, what if they don't come back when I'm ready for them to? And that question, my friends, is dangerous because it flips the power dynamic without you having to lift a finger. Now, why is this part so important for you? Because it's the first real test of your resolve. When night falls, you might feel the pull too. You might remember the old rhythm, sending that late goodnight text, reacting to their post, letting them know you're still there. And your mind will whisper, just one message won't hurt. But it will. Not because the message itself is wrong, but because it breaks the very stillness that's teaching them your worth. Your silence at night isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. You're showing, not telling, that you are no longer someone who has to insert yourself into their space to feel valid. You're no longer someone whose peace depends on their acknowledgement. And that shift in you is what makes your silence echo louder in them. Picture this: a candle burning in the corner of a room. In daylight it's small, unnoticeable. At night its glow feels alive, commanding attention. That's your absence. It's the thing they didn't see during the day, but now can't stop noticing. By the time midnight comes, the silence has taken on a shape. It's no longer just the absence of words, it's the presence of choice. You chose not to reach out, you chose not to fill the space. And in doing so, you've made it impossible for them to pretend you're still exactly where they left you. They may toss and turn, they may pick up their phone again, check the same apps, scroll the same feeds. And when they still find nothing from you, the questions they've been holding back start to tap on the edges of their mind. Why haven't they reached out? Did I do something? Are they done? They won't ask them out loud yet, but the echo has started. And here's the truth that makes this stage powerful. Most people will never admit when they feel someone's absence. They'll hide it behind jokes, pride, and distractions. But the body knows, the mind knows. And in the quiet of the night, those defenses weaken. That's when your presence in their thoughts is strongest, even when your presence in their life is silent. So hold the line, my friends. Let the night do its work. Don't rush to fill the gap. Don't break the silence to soothe your own doubts. This is where the shift happens, not in grand gestures, but in the slow, steady turning of their thoughts toward you without you having to pull them. Write this in the comments so it sticks in your mind. My absence glows. Let it be your reminder that you don't need to fight for space in someone's life. Your value is felt, even in the quiet. Show them, show yourself, show the world that your worth doesn't dim when you're not seen. It burns brighter in the dark. And if this is what happens in just one night, imagine what unfolds when this silence stretches into days. Stay with me. The cracks are coming. Day 2 to 3, the cracks beneath the surface. It's not the earthquake that breaks you. It's the tiny fractures you don't notice until the structure gives way. By the second or third day, my friends, the silence has stopped feeling like a moment and started feeling like a pattern. And patterns, especially broken ones, have a way of unsettling people in ways they can't put into words. They're not in a full-blown panic yet. They're not lying awake at night, wringing their hands. But something is different. There's a subtle shift in the air, the kind you can't see but can absolutely feel. During the first 24 hours, they could tell themselves 100 little stories to explain why you were quiet, busy, distracted, tired. But now those excuses are getting harder to believe, not because they have proof otherwise, but because the mind can only run on borrowed explanations for so long before it starts to doubt its own script. Think of it like walking past a crack in a wall you've seen before. At first, you shrug it off. It's nothing. But the next day, you walk past again, and it looks bigger. You can't be sure. Maybe you're imagining it, but now you're looking for it every time you pass. That's what's happening in their mind. Your absence is that crack, and every hour they don't hear from you makes it just a little harder to ignore. They start to notice the moments you're missing from, the routine updates you'd usually respond to, the casual photos you'd normally like, the inside jokes you'd drop a quick reaction to. They scroll through their phone and see these small gaps where your presence used to fit so naturally, and they feel it, not in some dramatic, collapsing on the floor way, but in those in-between seconds where their mind has nothing else to hold on to. And here's where it gets tricky for them. They've always believed they could predict you, that they could read you, that they knew the rhythm of your presence well enough to bet on it. But now the rhythm is gone. The song they were dancing to has changed tempo without warning, and they're stumbling to keep their footing. They'll try to convince themselves it's fine. They'll think, I'm not reaching out, I'm in control. But control that relies on the other person's predictable behavior isn't real control, and they're starting to feel that. Let's break a lie they might be holding on to. They think you're just doing this for attention, that you've gone quiet to make them chase you, that you're playing hard to get. And because they think this, they believe it's only a matter of time before you break. But this isn't about them at all. This is about you choosing not to pour your energy into someone who doesn't meet you at the same level. This is about you stepping back, not to manipulate but to protect. And protection feels different than performance. Performance is desperate, protection is calm, and calm, when it's this steady, makes people question themselves in ways they can't laugh off. On these second and third days, they might do something subtle. They might post something they think will catch your eye, a memory, a quote, a picture. Something designed to bait a reaction without exposing their hand. If you bite, the old pattern returns, and they can go back to believing they still hold the upper hand. But when you don't, that's when the first real crack widens. It's not just the silence that bothers them now. It's the fact that you seem completely unaffected by it. You're not rushing to fill the space. You're not watching their every move. You're not feeding the loop. And without that loop, they're left with themselves. And the uncomfortable thought that maybe they weren't as central to your life as they thought. My friends, this is the beauty of these days. The silence is no longer just absence. It's starting to act like a mirror. They're seeing things they didn't want to see before. The moments they dismissed you, the times they didn't respond with the same energy you gave them, the little ways they took your consistency for granted. And while they might not admit it yet, something inside them is starting to wonder if they made a mistake. Here's another metaphor for you. It's like having a warm coat you wear every winter without thinking about it. You don't appreciate it because it's always there. Then one day, the coat is gone. At first you're fine. You tell yourself you don't need it. But when the cold sets in, when the chill bites your skin, that's when you realize the coat wasn't just nice to have. It was comfort. It was security. And now it's gone. The human mind resists change until change starts to sting. And these second and third days are when the sting begins. They'll still smile in front of others. Still act like everything is fine. But behind the performance, their mind is working overtime. They're wondering what you're doing, who you're with, why you haven't checked in. And every time they ask themselves those questions, the crack in their certainty grows. This stage isn't about making them miss you. Missing you is only part of it. This is about disrupting the narrative they've been telling themselves. The narrative where you'll always be available, always ready, always willing. You've taken that storyline and tossed it out. Now they're standing in the middle of the plot with no idea how it ends. And here's the part you need to remember. Your job here is not to peek in and see how they're doing. It's not to test the waters or drop a breadcrumb of your own. Your job is to let the silence keep working. Because right now they're doing the heavy lifting for you. Every time they think about you without hearing from you, they're deepening the space you've created. Every time they check for a sign of you and find nothing, they're feeding the uncertainty. These cracks beneath the surface are just the beginning, but they're important. Because once a crack appears, the whole structure is weaker. They can patch it, they can paint over it, but they'll always know it's there. So here's your affirmation for this stage. My silence is my boundary. Write it in the comments, let others see it, let yourself see it. This is the moment where you're proving to them and to yourself that your peace is worth more than their attention. And my friends, if cracks are already forming on day 3, wait until the days ahead. Wait until the silence stops being a crack in their wall and starts feeling like a hole in their chest. Stay with me. The shift is about to get deeper. Day 4 to 6, the shift in their patterns. You don't notice how much space someone took up in your life until their absence starts rearranging the furniture in your mind. By the time day 4 arrives, my friends, something is starting to happen that they won't want to admit. The silence is no longer just an empty space. It's a force that's shaping how they move. It's subtle, almost invisible from the outside, but inside their patterns are bending around it. The way they check their phone changes. The way they scroll changes. The way they post changes. They are no longer living completely on their own rhythm. They're glancing at the doorway every so often to see if you've walked back in. In the first days, they were confident. They told themselves this was just a pause, a small ripple in the water. But by day 4, they've realized the ripple isn't fading. It's turning into a current. And they can feel it pulling at them, even if they pretend otherwise. They start to test the water. Maybe they post a song lyric they know once meant something between you. Maybe they share a photo that looks casual to everyone else, but is strategically chosen. An inside joke, a memory, an angle of their life they think might get your attention. They might even make their stories a little more curated, their captions a little sharper, their presence just a bit louder. It's bait, but dressed as everyday life. They do this because they want to see if you're still watching. They want to measure your silence. And here's the beauty of your position. You don't take the bait. You don't react. You don't break the stillness. You let them send their little signals into the void and hear nothing back. That absence of response, it speaks louder than any clever line or dramatic confrontation ever could. Think of it like a fisherman dropping a line into the water and expecting a tug. They've caught you before, so they believe they know exactly what bait works. But this time, they feel nothing. No pull, no movement, just still water. And that stillness makes them question if you're even swimming in the same waters anymore. By now, they're checking in on you more often, quietly, secretly, without saying a word. They might look at your profile several times a day, maybe even scroll further back than they intended. They're not looking for something specific. They're looking for proof that they still matter in your world. But the proof isn't coming. And this is where the fear begins to shift shape. It's no longer the fear of you being upset or distant. It's the fear that you might actually be fine without them. That thought is more dangerous to their pride than anything you could ever say. Because if you're fine without them, it forces them to ask, were they ever as invested as I thought? Or have I been the one relying on them all along? Here's the lie they've lived with, that your presence was proof of your need for them, that your consistent attention meant they were the center of your world. But your silence now is revealing a different truth, that your consistency wasn't need, it was choice, and a choice can be changed, and that's what unsettles them the most. Choices can be withdrawn, choices can be redirected. Choices mean you have agency, and if you can choose to give, you can also choose to stop. Day 5 is often where the frustration sets in. They've tried the subtle posts. They've maybe even sent a vague message to someone close to you just to see if your name comes up. But still, nothing from you. No sign that you've noticed or cared. This isn't how it's supposed to go in their mind. This is off script. You were supposed to crack. You were supposed to throw them a line. But instead, you're calm, you're focused, you're living your life without making a public show of it. And that calmness is louder than anger, louder than begging, louder than any attempt to prove your worth. Because anger says, you've affected me. Silence says, I've already moved past needing to explain myself. By day 6, they've started adjusting their movements around your absence without realizing it. They check their phone before bed, almost hoping for something. They post and then watch who views it, their eyes scanning for your name. They think about what they'd say if you did reach out, how they'd play it cool, how they'd mask the fact that they've been thinking about you more than they'd like to admit. And in these adjustments, the truth is beginning to take root. You've shifted the dynamic entirely. You're no longer reacting to them, they're reacting to you. And that shift isn't because you've manipulated them. It's because you've removed yourself from a pattern that depended on your constant participation. Here's another way to see it. Imagine a dance where you've always been the one leading, guiding the steps, keeping the rhythm. One day you stop dancing. At first they keep moving, thinking you'll join back in. But eventually the music feels off without your lead. Their steps falter, they hesitate. And in that hesitation, they start looking for you. Not because you owe them a dance, but because they finally realize how much of the dance depended on you being there. This stage is where your strength is tested again. It's tempting to break the silence when you notice their subtle moves. It's tempting to feel flattered, to step back into the old pattern for just a moment. But doing so would erase the space you've created. The space where they can see you clearly, without the constant noise of your presence. And make no mistake, they are starting to see you differently now. Not as the always available, always responsive constant they once assumed you were, but as someone who can stand in their own presence, who doesn't need to announce their worth to be felt. By holding your position in these days, you're not only protecting your peace, you're rewriting the story they tell themselves about you. You're showing that your value isn't tied to them noticing it. You're showing that you can walk away from the table and still eat well somewhere else. So hold the line, let them adjust, let them feel the shift in their patterns. Let them realize that the rhythm they thought they controlled has always been yours to set. Write this in the comments so it stays in your mind. I set the rhythm. Show them, show yourself, show the world that you're not here to keep dancing to someone else's tune. You're here to move on your own terms. And if they're already changing their patterns on day 6, my friends, just wait until the mirror turns fully toward them. Stay with me, because next, the silence won't just change how they move. It will start to change how they see themselves. Day 7 to 10. The mirror effect. Silence is a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their reflection. By the time we reach day 7, my friends, something deep begins to shift. Up until now, your absence has been a disruption, a break in the rhythm they were used to. But now, it's no longer just a missing piece of the puzzle. It's becoming a mirror, and that mirror doesn't just show them you, it shows them themselves. That's the part that starts to make them uncomfortable. See, for days, they've been trying to read you, trying to figure out what your silence means. But in the process, they've started noticing something else, how they acted when you were around, what they gave, what they didn't, how they responded to the energy you brought into their world. And my friends, when someone starts to see their own patterns reflected back at them, it's rarely a pretty picture. Silence does that. It strips away the noise, the constant back and forth, the distractions. It forces the mind to slow down long enough to notice the truth. And the truth they're facing now is this. Maybe they didn't value you the way they should have. Maybe they mistook your consistency for a given, your kindness for neediness, your presence for permanence. Here's the thing about mirrors. They don't lie. They don't soften the angles or hide the blemishes. And your silence right now is showing them every sharp edge of their behavior that they were able to ignore when you were constantly there to smooth things over. Imagine this. You're in a room full of people, and there's a big mirror on the wall. At first, you barely notice it. But after a while, you catch a glimpse of yourself. Not the version you thought you were showing, but the real one. Maybe your posture isn't as strong as you thought. Maybe the expression on your face isn't as confident as you imagined. You can't unsee it once you've noticed. That's what's happening to them right now, except the mirror isn't glass, it's your absence. And here's where another lie gets exposed. They believed that as long as they didn't outright lose you, they could keep doing things the same way. They thought you'd always be there to fill the silence, to reach out first, to keep the connection alive. But now, with the space you've created, they're being forced to see what the relationship looks like when you're not the one holding it together. By day 8, this reflection starts to feel heavier. They're not just noticing that you're gone, they're noticing that the version of themselves they see without you around isn't who they thought they were. Maybe they prided themselves on being attentive, but your silence is showing them how passive they've actually been. Maybe they saw themselves as the one in control, but your lack of reaction is proving they were relying on your predictability more than they realized. And my friends, when pride meets truth, there's always a fracture. This is why the mirror effect is so powerful. It's not you telling them they fell short, it's them realizing it on their own. And that realization hits harder than any lecture ever could, because it comes from inside. People can argue with your words, but it's a lot harder to argue with the reflection staring back at them. Here's where the thoughts start to shift. Instead of asking, "Why aren't they talking to me?" they start asking, "Did I do something to make them not want to?" That's a dangerous question for their ego, because it invites the possibility that they weren't as important to you as they believed. And that's when the subtle rewrites begin. They replay moments where they were distant or dismissive. They remember times you gave, and they didn't match it. They think about conversations where you opened up and they brushed it off. And the weight of those memories is amplified by the fact that you're not here to balance them out with your usual presence. By day 9, they might start trying to balance the scales in small ways. Maybe they like an old photo of yours. Maybe they comment on something you've posted, not directly to start a conversation, but to drop a pebble into your pond and see if there's a ripple. They might even send a message that's vague enough to retreat from if you don't respond, but pointed enough to test your temperature. And here's the key, my friends. You still don't move. You let the mirror stay where it is. You let them keep looking. Because every day they spend in this space, the reflection becomes clearer. And the clearer it gets, the harder it is for them to deny the role they played in your absence. By day 10, this isn't just about curiosity anymore, it's about discomfort. Discomfort with the silence, yes, but also discomfort with what the silence is showing them about themselves. They can't hide behind the idea that you need them more than they need you, because your actions are showing the opposite. They can't pretend you're hanging on by a thread, because you've stopped reaching for the rope entirely. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They're starting to respect you in a way they didn't before, because most people crack. Most people, when they pull away, leave the door half open just in case. But you've closed it without slamming it. You've made it clear you're not playing a game, you're living in peace. And that kind of self-possession is rare. The mirror effect doesn't just change how they see themselves, it changes how they see you. Before, they might have seen you as someone who needed their attention to feel secure. Now they're seeing you as someone who gives attention as a choice, not as a default. And that choice has been withdrawn. And my friends, nothing humbles the ego faster than realizing someone's world doesn't revolve around them anymore. This stage isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing them with distance. It's about showing them, without words, what happens when you take your energy back. It's about letting them sit in the quiet long enough to see what they truly brought to the table and what they didn't. The mirror is unforgiving, but it's honest, and once they've seen the truth in it, they can't unsee it. Write this in the comments so it becomes your anchor. My silence shows truth. Let it be a reminder to yourself and a signal to the world around you that your absence isn't empty, it's reflective. It's a space where truth becomes unavoidable. And if they're already struggling with the reflection by day 10, my friends, just wait. The cracks in their ego are about to deepen, and soon the mirror won't just show them what they've lost. It will make them question if they ever really had it to begin with. Stay with me, the tremble is coming. Days 11 to 15, the ego trembles. The most dangerous earthquakes aren't the ones that shake the ground. They're the ones that shift the foundation without warning. By the time day 11 arrives, my friends, the silence has gone from being a curious gap to a living thing. It's not just a missing sound anymore, it's a presence in its own right. And in this presence, something fragile inside them begins to wobble. It's not their love, it's not their feelings, it's their ego. Up until now, they could still cling to the illusion of control. They could still tell themselves the comforting story that you'd eventually bend back their way, that the pattern was simply running its course. But every day you hold the line, every hour you remain still, the old script becomes harder to believe. And when the story they've told themselves starts to crumble, so does the confidence that was built on it. The ego, my friends, is a master storyteller. It will say, "They miss me, they'll be back, I'm still in control." But silence is the great truth teller. It strips away the decoration. It exposes what's real. And by this stage, the reality they're facing is one they've worked very hard to avoid. You are fine without them. Now, don't underestimate how unsettling that is for someone who's used to being the center of your attention. When you've always been present, they've always been able to feel certain about their importance. But when you step back and stop confirming that importance, you force them into a mental wilderness where every familiar landmark is gone. They can't read your signals because you're not sending any. They can't measure your feelings because you're not displaying them. And the human ego hates the unknown more than it hates rejection. By day 12, this unknown starts to push them into self-reflection. But it's not the calm, peaceful kind of reflection we talk about in self-growth books. No, this is the restless kind. The kind where they replay moments in their head, looking for where things shifted. They'll think about the times you seemed more quiet than usual. They'll wonder if they missed a sign. They'll question whether they underestimated what you meant when you went still. And here's the key. They can't ask you, because asking you would mean admitting they're not in control anymore. So instead, they ask themselves, over and over. By day 13, something else begins to take root. Doubt. Not the healthy kind, but the kind that eats away at pride. They start to doubt the version of the story where they held all the power. They start to doubt the idea that you were the one clinging. They start to doubt that if they reached out now, you'd even respond the way they expect. And once doubt cracks the armor, my friends, the tremble begins. Think of a tall tower swaying in the wind. It doesn't fall immediately, but once it starts moving, every gust makes the sway bigger. Every gust weakens the structure just a little more. That's their ego right now, still standing, but swaying in ways it hasn't before. By day 14, you've flipped the energy completely. They're no longer waiting for you to return to the pattern. They're quietly wondering if the pattern even exists anymore. And in that wondering, there's a kind of vulnerability they can't fully hide. Maybe they post something that seems more personal than usual. Maybe they send a message that has just enough ambiguity to deny if you don't respond. Maybe they show up where they think you might be, hoping for a coincidental encounter. But all of it is coated with a nervousness they didn't feel before. Because in their mind, the risk is now real. They might try to step toward you and find you've stepped too far away to meet them. And this is the power of this stage. You're not chasing, you're not asking for anything, you're not even reacting to their small movements. You're living, you're building, you're focused. And in doing so, you've done the one thing the ego can't handle. You've shown that it was never the source of your worth. Here's the lie they've believed, that as long as they remained an option for you, they were the priority. But your silence in these days is proving the truth. That the only priority you answer to now is yourself. That you can love someone, value them, even cherish the memories, but still refuse to make your peace negotiable. And my friends, that truth is both humbling and magnetic. Humbling because it forces them to face the fact that they may have overestimated their hold on you. Magnetic because deep down, people are drawn to what they can't control. By day 15, their ego isn't just trembling. It's in a quiet panic. Not loud, not dramatic, but that uneasy hum in the background of their thoughts. The hum that whispers, "I might have lost something I can't replace." And here's the part you must remember. The point of this silence isn't to destroy them. It's not revenge. It's not manipulation. It's not about winning a game. It's about standing in your worth so firmly that you no longer have to explain it to anyone. It's about letting them feel the natural consequence of taking your presence for granted. Because when they finally look into that mirror your silence has held up and see the cracks in their own reflection, they'll know. They'll know it wasn't you who broke first. They'll know it wasn't you who couldn't hold the line. And they'll know that the person they thought they had forever access to has become someone they now have to earn. So write this in the comments so it becomes part of your DNA. My worth is unshakable. Let the world see it. Let yourself see it. Because this isn't just about them. It's about you building a foundation so solid that no one's absence or presence can make it crumble. If you've felt the shift, if you've watched someone's ego tremble when you finally chose peace over pursuit, drop your story below. Someone out there needs to hear how it played out for you. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of strength, clarity, and self-respect, press that like button, subscribe to join our community, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded. You don't have to shout to be felt. Stay with me, because the silence is about to turn into something they can no longer run from.